Today's guest is Kate Save, founder and CEO of the revolutionary BeFit Food. Kate has been incredibly instrumental in the introduction of dietitian-approved, scientifically proven ready-made meals for clinical weight loss and true health improvement. Launching her business in 2015, it was 2017 where Kate first made national headlines, appearing on Shark Tank Australia, where she attracted the attention of Janine Allis and ultimately her investment. Today, you'll learn about Kate's personal health journey and the experiences that have shaped her into wanting to join the health space. You'll learn about the marketing activities that Kate undertook in the early days of BeFit Food, how she was able to navigate rapid overnight growth, and how she scaled her staff from 5 to 63 in just 4 weeks. Let's welcome Kate to the pod. Kate, it's fantastic to have you here. How's things?
Oh, doing well. Very glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. And I'm looking forward to exploring a bit of your journey from the start of BeFit Food to where you are now and all the challenges that you've faced in that time, both marketing related and personal side of things too. So let's have a chat.
Sounds great.
I'm really, really interested. What shaped you to wanting to get involved in the health industry? Because it's a broad area, but it's really important as well. So what was those experiences early days in your youth that really drew you to the industry?
Yeah, so actually as a child, I was in and out of hospital all the time. I used to get these really chronic stomach aches and they kept looking for things up until I was about 8 years old. So they started when I was 18 months old and they actually couldn't find out what was wrong with me. And I'd get these crippling pains, I'd be throwing up for days and then I'd be sore in the tummy, not be able to eat or walk or go to school for maybe up to 2 weeks, depending on how bad it was. So I'd go and stay at my grandparents' house and eventually when my grandfather died, my parents worked full time and they didn't have the time to take me to all these medical appointments, and because they'd been told there's nothing wrong with me, they knew something was wrong but they didn't know what to do, so they just let it go. And by the time I got to 19 and I had a license, I was at university, I had 7 casual jobs, if I got sick, it was a much bigger deal because I could be on the freeway and I'd be by myself. I'd have to call an ambulance. They'd take me to hospital, knock me out. And yeah, I really wanted to get to the bottom of it. So this particular time, I finished university. I've gone to one of my casual jobs. I've worked in a bar till 6 a.m. in the morning. I've driven back to the peninsula and gone for a scan before I went to sleep. I woke up at 3 p.m. that Friday afternoon, I think it was, to 7 old-fashioned voicemail messages on the answering machine of my parents' house, and my parents weren't home and they just saying it's really urgent, message for Kate, you need to come in. So I go in and I thought, I hope they've actually found something that's pretty serious because I'm sick of being told there's nothing wrong with me or that I'm making it up. And sure enough, they said, look, we think you've got a tumour, we need to do emergency surgery. And being a naive little 19-year-old, I said, you know what, I've got some plans. I had a birthday, I was doing inside sport and some modelling and bits and pieces then. So I said, you're going to have to wait 2 weeks, and had the surgery. As a parent now, I just think, what I must have put my parents through. It would have been horrible, but I was pretty independent, as you could tell. So my whole youth was really about working out what food was making me sick, because the doctors said, it's something she's eating. And I knew the ins and outs of food, and I knew it wasn't food that was making me sick. So that's where my passion started.
And that's a really strong passion as well, because you can see where that comes into what you've done with BeFit Food and how that transitions to really help people, because there's so many different illnesses and conditions that people know, as you said yourself, they know that they're not feeling 100% and it can't be diagnosed, or it struggles to be diagnosed.
Yeah, and it's about using food as the first medicine, I guess, that if you can unravel your diet, I guess, and actually work on getting just whole foods in, really clean, basic foods, then hopefully whatever condition you've got starts to improve, or you can manage it completely, and then you can add on the treat foods from there. But I think getting the foundation right is the key. And for most patients that I see as a dietitian, exercise physiologist and diabetes educator, I found that a really clean, basic diet would really get rid of 70% of the problems. And then everything else was just very small tweaks and adjustments.
So talking of that clean diet, what does that look like?
4 to 12 different vegetables in every meal, high protein, low carb. For a lot of people initially, it's gluten-free, and it may even be low dairy depending on how sensitive people are. Sure. So I guess the menu at BeFit Food is 99% gluten-free. We have one product, our wholemeal beef lasagna, that outsells any other product that is not gluten-free, but we have a gluten-free lasagna as well. So I use that same premise and making sure we jammed in as many vegetables as we could. And the premise behind that is building a healthy gut, that we support a healthy gut microbiome, and we know that if you have a healthy gut, you reduce inflammation in the body, and it's actually linked to all of the chronic health diseases as well. So it can help with diabetes, blood pressure, inflammatory bowel conditions, and overall they're linking diet and mental health too.
That's really interesting. So healthy gut reduces inflammation, and inflammation, that's linked with everything, right? Health-wise. So if you can cut down on inflammation, it's almost, you can't call it a cheat code, of course, but it's almost like a way to just prevent many, many illnesses.
Yeah, and I guess I don't want to use inflammation as a cop-out, because it's not a single thing. It is a collection of many, many, probably thousands of chemical reactions in the body, and lots of different components that are involved to reduce inflammation. But it will start with diet, because if you can reduce the inflammation from the food that you're putting in, and if you can do any sort of movement that also helps with reducing inflammation, then you'll start to really give the system what it needs to be able to repair itself. So it's actually about supporting the immune system, and then the immune system can actually do the work to reduce the inflammation.
Sure. So what was the inspiration then behind BeFit Food? Because that's at the start, very heavily centred around weight loss, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So how does that transition from that real passion that you had for identifying what was the cause of your own illness, and then of course that in other people as well, and then bringing that into a weight loss identity?
So it actually started as a product, as an alternative to bars and shakes diet. So I worked in bariatric surgery a lot, and what I found in bariatric surgery is everyone who goes for weight loss surgery or bariatric surgery had to go on what they call a VLCD or VLED, a very low energy diet or a very low calorie diet. And the global standard around the world for this is actually bars or shakes diet, so where people have a particular meal replacement as a shake, and then they use that to shrink the liver so that when they go for surgery, the liver's no longer fatty, which means the risk of the surgery is less, because the tools that lift up the liver to get to the stomach to actually perform the surgery, you don't want an occlusion of the view, and you don't want things in the way, more or less. So it helps make the inside a little bit tidier, neater, better for surgery. So I looked at these synthetic supplement meal replacement diets, and I looked at their formulations and their ingredients, and I get it, they work, and they are the standard because they work. But what I found years later is when people had had the weight loss surgery, for about the first 2 years, they always lose weight, and they lose a lot of weight. But after that, the only reason they'll keep losing weight is if they've actually changed all of their habits and their lifestyle habits. Now, if they haven't been taught healthy lifestyle habits and they go back to old habits, you watch them start to regain weight. And the saddest part about that is that these people have given up everything to lose the weight, feel amazing, reduce all of their, their health conditions. So a lot of them may have had diabetes, and they wake up after surgery without diabetes, or blood pressure, cholesterol. They get off medications, but then when the weight starts coming back, then all these things can start to return, and particularly the way they feel about themselves. And it's not about a weight on the scales, it's about how somebody feels in themselves. And we all have a comfortable weight where we go, I'm happy as I am, and it doesn't matter what that weight is, whether it's 80 kilos or 120 kilos, it does not matter. But people have a comfortable weight, and then they have a few more kilos where they go, I'm not comfortable anymore. Doesn't matter what the starting weight is, it's just a personal preference. So I wanted to help people to support them for the long-term weight maintenance, which is not about necessarily just getting the weight off, it's about healthy behaviours. So I wanted to create a whole food solution that gave them that initial weight loss before the surgery, that taught them how to eat properly, what the portion control is, what the meal should look like, how much protein it should have, how much of it should be vegetable content, and change their palate. So for a lot of people, they may not start with what I would call a healthy palate. So they're actually accustomed to eating out or having takeaway where the food could be high in MSG or high in salt, high in sugars, or just heavily processed with lots of sauces and marinades and perhaps emulsifiers and additives, sweeteners, where you've got this really hyper-stimulated brain from eating foods that I wanted to kind of dull that down and teach them what real food tastes like and what a healthy palate is. And a healthy palate is really about tasting the meat, tasting the vegetables, tasting the herbs and spices. And if you don't like that taste, you need to change your palate. You don't change the food to suit the palate. So it was about re-educating people about basic food, that I get it, not everyone loves vegetables, too bad. That's what the body needs. You need to find a way to love your vegetables, whether you roast them or steam them or you put them in a marinade with healthy things like garlic and ginger and chili and a bit of soy or something like that, but not a sticky sauce, not a jar of sugar with artificial colours and flavours and rubbish in it. So that's where it started, to teach people good habits. And during that process, they were losing quite a bit of weight because it was low calorie. So we found that people were losing on average 5.89 kilos in 14 days,
Wow.
which... recognise that, but that wasn't why we created it. We actually created it for good habits and for nourishing people. And that weight loss was really just a side effect of these people eating really, really well. And sure enough, people started telling other people. And when people had said, I haven't had weight loss surgery, their friends and family were saying, oh, you just don't want anyone to know. Of course you've had weight loss surgery. And they're like, no, I haven't. I've been on this BeFit food. And then someone would tell someone who'd tell someone. And next thing you know, we had this huge customer base that we just didn't expect.
Yeah, that's a really good message to reinforce as well. You fall to your levels of your systems, I think, as James Clear says in his book. And that's a good reinforcement there, is you can have the weight loss surgery, but if it's going to be 2 years later and you bring back that weight because the effect of that surgery is no longer impacting your body, then what was the purpose of it in the first place? Why don't you just spend the time, learn how to eat properly, learn about food and about your health, and you can keep that and sustain it for years to come.
Really absolutely. And I guess the new choice of weight loss out there is the Ozempics and the Wegovy's and all the medications, but they are similar in a sense that as soon as you stop taking them, you stop losing weight and you potentially start gaining weight. So unless people learn how to eat well, you can't outsmart your body. You just can't. So even if people are taking the weight loss drugs, we think it's even more important that they go on BeFit food because they'll have less of an appetite, and they actually have it shows it reduces sugar cravings and cravings for fatty food. So it's actually easy for them to eat healthy because they lose interest in food. But that habit of actually not buying those things that they used to fill up the trolley with and just buying meat and vegetables and herbs and spices, if that's a habit they can continue, each to their own. I'm not there to judge, I'm there to support them.
Sure. So let's talk about the early days of BeFit Food. 2015 you launched, and it was a fairly successful first year of trading for what it's worth, 77,000 in revenue, and this was before the days of Shark Tank, of course, as well. So how did your marketing and your initial activities around that to get your name out there, what did that look like?
We did absolutely nothing. We actually tried to keep it a secret because we were only servicing patients that were having bariatric surgery, and then if their friends or family found out about it, then we were servicing them. And then it actually got to the point where we had so many customers that I had to leave my consulting business as a dietitian, diabetes educator and ex-phys to be able to serve these customers, because we didn't realise there would be such a demand for the product. And as a dietitian, I wanted to make sure that I was giving people advice with the food, that this is your kickstart, these are the habits you'll learn, but this is not what you do for life. Our goal is to teach you how to do it yourself. So really, it was years to come before we put a cent into marketing. We literally were hiding it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, people were knocking on the doors of our dark kitchen. So we actually rented a tiny little old fish and chip shop, and we blacked out all the windows so nobody knew what it was. We had no signage, and people could smell the food down the street. We were opposite one bank, next door to another, and they'd come knocking on the door, and the chefs would call me every day and say, if you do not put someone in the front here to answer the door, we're all going to walk out. We cannot get any work done in here. And so sure enough, I went down there one day and people just kept coming to the door and asking to buy food. And I had to say, we don't sell food. And they're like, well, what are you cooking? Well, we do sell food, but not from here and not for you. We only sell it online. And it really tested me, I guess, because I hadn't created something that I thought was for anybody who wanted to change their habits. I really thought it was just for this niche group. And then when I realised, well, it's just meat and vegetables, herbs and spices, it can actually do no harm. They're my home recipes that I feed to my family. So if they're good enough for my kids, my husband, my mum and my dad, then why can't everyone eat them? They're just a smaller portion than what a regular person would eat. Yeah.
Talk about creating demand. There you go.
Yeah. I think if you have really strong intentions and purpose and you listen to people and what they need, and the number one thing I would hear was I could stick to the plan if only someone came and cooked for me or gave me the food. And I just thought, this is so simple. We put the food in a box and we put it on people's doorsteps. And then all they have to do is clear out their pantry, their fridge, their freezer, except the bottom drawer of the fridge with all the veggies and salads. They can have as many of those as they like, and they eat. That's it. So simple.
Yeah. And that speaks exactly to the purpose of Be Fit Food. And I love this statement. We want to help Australians to eat themselves better.
Yeah.
That is a perfect example of what it is that you do at Be Fit Food. You help Australians eat themselves better. Amazing.
Yeah, and I think the strength in that statement is helping others to do something, not taking their money or trying to really actually trying to help them, because the idea is to set them up so they can do it on their own. It'd be silly to say we don't want more customers. We absolutely do, but we want to set people up to do little resets with us, go away, live their life, enjoy their life, take away some healthy habits, and then come back when they need a reset. So we do find that our customers come back at least 4 times a year, after Christmas, after Easter, after a big holiday or a big event.
Which makes perfect sense.
Before a big event. So we know that people overindulge in those times a year, and that's totally fine, but I think a lot of people need to find that reset button and clear out the excess, because otherwise one thing rolls into another, and before people recognise at the end of a year it may be 100 grams a week, which is then 5 kilos, which is then 10 kilos, and then they're in a world of trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in this period where you were starting to get demand as being a dark kitchen, people knocking on the door, we want the food. Yeah. Is this when the idea of jumping on Shark Tank came around?
Yeah, it did, because we recognised we're going to need a bigger kitchen at some stage. We're going to need more staff. We're going to need to have someone to stand at the door. Yeah. An online platform that was scalable, and that was, realistically, we were a couple of years in, we were putting every dollar that we're earning in and really not seeing any money come out the other end, because growth sucks cash, and makes sense to me now, but back then I couldn't understand why we weren't making money and why we were funding other people's health. And then I sort of recognised, okay, you need to build better systems, you need to build scalable systems. And when you're only buying enough food or enough containers or enough packaging for 1,000 meals a week, you're not going to get the same benefits in terms of cost and pricing and volume breaks as you do when you're doing 30,000 meals a week. So that's when we really recognised we had a cash flow problem.
Yeah. So the impact of Janine Allis, so she's obviously invested in the business at a Shark Tank. How big of an influence has she been on the success of BeFit Food over the years?
Yeah, so I'll take you back to Shark Tank. So Shark Tank's not always, well, it's never what it appears on TV, really. So when I was on it, there had been around 100 episodes made. There'd been around 50 deals made on air over the years that it was made prior to the remake more recently. And only 3 of us, to my knowledge, ever received any funds.
Right.
I thought I was going to walk out of Shark Tank with one of those big giant checks. I was so excited and I was already planning, well, I don't want to fold it. I wonder how I'm going to transport it back and worrying about how I was going to get the check back until I realised there was no place with people signing checks and there was no check and then there was no contact for almost 2 months afterwards. So they go through a due diligence process, and in that due diligence process, they reassess all the deals. And I came back to a no, and I was like, hang on, I thought we made a deal. And I just knew that we could change the lives of so many people. And because the business had been running for 2 years prior to that, we'd reversed type 2 diabetes in so many people, blood pressure, cholesterol. People didn't go for weight loss surgery because they'd lost so much weight learning the healthy habits to do it themselves, and people that had had the weight loss surgery had actually formed healthy habits for life. So I knew that it was changing people's lives in a really good way. So the passion in me would not take a no. I just kept going back for 9 months until I finally got a yes.
Wow.
So yeah.
And that's what you got to do. You got to keep knocking on the door every time.
Yeah.
To see what comes of
all
it.
the no's.
Yeah. That's really interesting. And I guess, as you said, not everything that you see is what it seems.
Yes.
And that's definitely an interesting perspective that not many people would know about.
Yeah. And look, Janine Allis was fantastic because when she did come on board, she became really passionate too because she would hear the stories. And even her own PA did BeFit Food and lost 8 kilos, which was 2 bags of potatoes. And she did this incredible post that we used on social media. And that was one of the best marketing things we ever did. It was so authentic and we did not expect it to have the results that it had. Yeah.
So the growth that came after Shark Tank, you can say almost overnight, the success that came of it, from 5 staff to 63 in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a big rise. How did you deal with that?
Oh, it was an absolute nightmare. So literally after the show went to air that night, I'd prepped the next day to make sure that I had a handful of friends to come and help in case it was busy. And at the time, we only had staff in the kitchen, so I 5 sort of staff, and I was at the warehouse going to take orders, I guess. And I'd plugged in all these VoIP phones into all the internet portals around the warehouse, and I actually redirected the phones to a friend of a friend who had a call centre because I thought, well, I can only answer one phone, so I'm going to redivert them all. And next thing you know, I walk in and I'm like, gosh, the roads are really busy today. I wonder where all the cars are going. And I could just see this lineup of cars. It was literally a kilometre line of cars coming to find BeFit Food and pick up their food. So our website had crashed only 2 minutes into the show, and we already saw 60,000 people on the website trying to add to cart. So we just did not know how many orders we'd taken. It kept coming back online and we'd get a bit of a glimpse and then it'd disappear. So I said to the production manager at the time, I think we're going to have a lot more orders than what we've prepared for. And I said, oh, have you got all the meals in the warehouse ready to go? And he goes, to be honest, I thought you were full of shit and I didn't make it all.
Oh, no.
He goes, I didn't want to waste your money. I just didn't think anyone would buy it. And I was like, you are kidding me. And I was like, so how many packs do we have? Because we're selling 7-day meal packs. I'd asked for 800. He goes, I only made 200.
Oh.
So by 9:05, we did not have one meal left in the building. And I'd logged on and seen we'd already sold 2,500 packs. And I'm like, 5 minutes in and we were doomed. So it was then a matter of trying to find more kitchens, find more staff, scale up production, and it was just a pretty heavy job from then on.
A lot of late nights, early mornings.
A lot of late nights, yep. A lot of very long days, but I literally got through because of the community support. I am so eternally grateful for every friend, family member and local community person that literally just turned up and they go, I saw you on Shark Tank last night. Do you want a hand? Do you want some help? And people just literally came to help. And I always refer back to, so my best friend, her husband, they set me up a kitchen and they got their friends involved that had pubs that helped with other kitchens. And we had warehouses we were borrowing. We had freezer containers everywhere. The electrician we were using at the time, he gave us his dad's truck license so that we could hire trucks, and Tony from Mazda loaned us a van so that we had transport for the meals, and it was a real community support effort.
And that's the best thing about living on the peninsula.
Oh, it's good.
You've got this community at your doorstep and everyone is so friendly, so happy and willing to help. And that's a perfect example of it right there.
And I will always give back to the community because we wouldn't be here without their support.
So as that growth came in post Shark Tank and you've gone from needing 800 meals to only having 200 and you're sold out by 905 and the website's crashed and all of this, great to see the demand there. How did you then scale over that time to really bring in all the systems that you needed to put in place, website-wise, staff-wise, and then beyond that, how did you change your practices in the business marketing-wise to grow even further?
Yeah, and I think the key there was actually getting a few really smart people on the team that had done some of this before, because I certainly hadn't. So having key marketing personnel, key operations people, and people that knew how to run a warehouse, which I didn't. I didn't know how to stack pallets. I didn't know all those things that just come naturally to anyone who works in a warehouse. They know how to do that. They know how to manage inventory and forklifts and containers and all those sorts of things. So I just had a really good team, and the team were able to put systems in place. It certainly wasn't overnight. It took about 6 months. So we slowly caught up, and we offered everyone that night who'd placed an order a refund. 90% of the people would not take it. They literally said they would wait indefinitely, but they wanted the food. And we're like, you are kidding. So people just were looking for a solution, a healthy, really whole food solution that could do no harm, I guess.
And if that doesn't show you how strong of a customer base that you've got, when you've made an error in judgment, you haven't been able to fulfill their order, and you're like, here, have a refund. We'll still give you the meal, but take a refund. Like, no, we'll wait, and we don't want your refund. That is such a strong customer base you've got, Kate.
Yeah, and today we certainly do have an extremely strong customer base, and they are very, very loyal. So our customers have really, I won't call it odd behaviour, but it's certainly not typical patterns of buying that you would see with other brands. And it's because our customers come back when they need a reset. And when you would need a reset versus me versus someone else, it's we don't have the same birthday, we don't have the same big events or the same holidays. We don't have the same habits, so we're going to be resetting at all different times. So some people might skip a whole year and then they might do 12 orders in a year and they want to do one a month, or they might do that seasonal reset, but they do it around what's happening in their social calendar.
So, Kate, around 18 months, 2 years ago, you brought out your business partners. So now you run BeFit Food solo.
Yes.
How do you find that change in operations?
Operationally, we were always running pretty independently. So the shareholders and investors were really important for us to get that initial advice, get everything off the ground, be a sounding board, and certainly for the monthly reporting and to challenge everything. But I guess as the business finds its own rhythm, sometimes people's skill sets, you give everything that you can give, and then you go, okay, well, that's it. So I just found there was a point where perhaps we weren't getting as much, banter and challenging each other, and it just became apparent to me that I think I needed to do it on my own and look for the next step and who was going to challenge me next. Yeah. So, yeah.
And how have things changed over the past 2 years from where things were to current day, your day-to-day role within the business?
Oh, gosh. No day is the same. And I think I treat it still like a startup because it needs the same energy and the same passion to really keep it growing and keep it alive. And obviously having COVID in the middle of all of this, it was a really tough period for every business. And the challenges that we experienced were quite unique as well because we're a product for health improvement. A lot of people during COVID, particularly people in Melbourne that were in lockdown, were not thinking about how do I improve my health. They were thinking about how do I keep my job? How do I avoid getting COVID? How do I save my mental health? I'm just going to drink alcohol, eat cheese and get Uber Eats. They weren't thinking, I'm going to lose some weight because they're not getting in their jeans. They're not going to big events. There are no weddings. So nobody was in their skinny jeans. Everyone was in their activewear and their tracky pants. So you don't realise that things are changing until you have to get into your suit or something that's a little bit, more form-fitting. So we had a pretty tough few years where other hospitality businesses, certainly not restaurants, but businesses that pivoted to takeaway and your Uber Eats, and they went through the roof. And a lot of the meal kits did another meal home delivery, but we stuck true to our core value, which I guess wasn't the shareholders' advice to me. They did want us to pivot and to go more down the direction of whether it was family meals or whatever people wanted to buy. So people wanted bakery food and sourdough and, different foods. And that just wasn't why I started the business. It wasn't what I was passionate about. And I knew when we came out of it, these people would need that health improvement. So if we sold them the problem, it just didn't seem right ethically to sell them the solution after that. So we waited.
Yeah, and that's a important metric to hold to yourself, is to stay true to your values and stay true to your purpose. Because as soon as you divert away from that, then your customer's going to see straight through it. They're going to lose interest. They're going to move somewhere else. So to stay true to that, despite the crazy economic circumstances that were COVID between 2020, 2021 and beyond, you've done well to do that and come out the other end successful as well.
Yeah, and I think the toughest part around it was, as a brand, I put my name to it, I put my clinical reputation, and everything that happens in the company has to have my stamp of approval. So if I don't genuinely believe it can help the health of another human being, it will not go in our products. So we have no added sugar, no artificial sweeteners, no artificial colours and flavours. So we're very strict on what goes in the food. It has to be low carb, has to be high protein. And if we started to compromise on that, I just didn't know what we stood for. And I looked at the ready-made meals companies that were growing rapidly, and I just thought, well, they've got a lot of them, are doing at least 100 million to 300 million, and their marketing budgets are sitting, at 10% of that, some of them. So we were never going to have that same budget, so we couldn't compete with them. So it made sense to stay niche, to own our little area. And that really just meant that the customers, once they were looking for something to reset metabolism and reset their health and, get their health back on track, they'd come looking for us, because we work 100% of the time in 100% of customers as long as they're compliant. If they're not compliant, then we actually would say to people, you know what, why don't you try the other programs first? If you're not sure that you're going to like it or it's going to be enough for you or it's what you're looking for, then don't try us first. Try everything else. If that doesn't work and you think you want something that might actually work, then come and try us. And then people actually enjoy the food a lot more because the expectations are met. And I often say this to people and they go, I thought the food was going to be bad from what you said. They go, the food's unbelievable. And I'm like, I didn't say it was bad. I just said, it's herbs and spices and meat and vegetables. And if you don't like the taste of that in food, then you're not going to enjoy the food. So,
and healthy food, good food, doesn't have to taste bad.
No.
That's it's a misconception a lot of people have.
Yes.
I've got to eat healthy, it's going to be bland, it's going to be tasteless. No, it can taste so good.
Yeah, and the other thing with our food is I always said it's non-sexy food. It's not Instagrammable food. Like, because we put 4 to 12 veggies into a meal, it doesn't have this colourful array of things. It's like if you were to if I make a really healthy smoothie, it's probably coming out brown, because if I'm putting in berries and putting in spinach and you're putting the red and green together, it's not Instagrammable, right? And that's how I talk about our food. We put all the good stuff in, and it's not, it doesn't look unpleasant, but it certainly doesn't look like the popping, vibrant, well spaced out colours of other meals, because that's just not what we're aiming to do. We're aiming to change the gut health from the inside so that the person feels healthy on the outside. Yeah.
So touching on Instagram there, you've had a very strong customer base, which is fantastic over the 9-10 years you've been in business. Word of mouth has been huge for you, which is a successful metric of any good business.
Yeah.
What other areas of marketing have you seen be really good? Being a product-based business, looking at weight loss, have you seen SEO do really well for you? Social media, you talked about Instagram just then. What outside of word of mouth has been really good for you?
I think the biggest challenge was when the algorithms changed with Facebook and even with Google, and the way that you can market and who you can market to. So you're very limited if you are a health brand to actually talk about any health conditions. You can't make any claims, and we've been pulled down off Facebook for about 6 weeks, and we've even been pulled off Google because we're making claims that are real claims that are backed by science. We actually have papers to support it, but their bots that are assessing these things can't see that sometimes, so we've had to fight to get back on. So it's quite painful, so we have to be very careful with what we say on social media or on Google Ads, because we could get reprimanded for something that's true and real, and we have the credibility, but we can't say it. So I think that's been a bit of a change, whereas years ago, particularly 5 to 10 years ago when we started, it was much, much easier. But now, to stand apart, you really can't say anything different to a brand that doesn't have any credibility.
Right.
So it's pretty tough. Yeah. So I think my focus has always been on educating people and PR. And I've also always wanted to be really authentic around the brand. So hence the non-Instagrammable sort of pictures that we put out there. And I remember in the early days, my marketing team would say, oh, you can't use that. We have to style the food and do this and that. And I was like, really? So anyway, we hired a great photographer, did food styling. The number one complaint that came in every single day was the food doesn't look like the pictures. This meal does not look like the pictures. So we get bad reviews. And so I went, go back to get the frozen meal, put it in the microwave, heat it up and take a photo. So literally we get the frozen food, we do not do anything to it. We don't actually heat it up. We just let it defrost and we take a photo. That's it. So the picture on the packet is exactly how the food's going to look. And that now, I guess, is becoming more trendy on social media because people want real, they want authentic, and we're not lying, so we can't be criticised around that.
And it's crazy to think that we're in a time now where being authentic and being truthful is actually a differentiator in the market, because so many businesses, so many brands are taking on AI, which is good in some circumstances, but when it comes to authenticity, you can't get any authenticity out of AI and AI images. So if you can present something that is authentic, it's a big differentiator now, which is crazy to think.
And that is a big point of difference in our brand, is everything is handmade. So people are physically in the kitchen, chopping, prepping, nothing's being pumped out of machines. So a lot of the meals that are on the market, because they're at such scale, they're all being pumped out of machines. And I'm sure if we went down that path, we'd have a much higher margin, but we're not going to do that because I want people to chew their food, and I want to use ingredients that are real, that are, delivered fresh daily, prepared daily, and then snap frozen. So they've got the highest levels of nutrients, and we know that freezing actually preserves DNA. It preserves the bacteria on the food, the integrity of the food, the nutrient levels. It's the only way to really get high quality food, I guess, that can be consumed, and you get all of the same benefits from the day it was made. Whereas any other way, if you gas the food, all the other ways, at some point in time, you find they've got a use-by date or an expiry date, and it might be 30 days or 40 days, but you're starting to get a decline in nutrient levels. You're starting to get a bit build up of bacterial levels. And because we also service a lot of people that are on the NDIS, because 80% of the meals are covered by the NDIS, or the cost of the meals, also home care, so a lot of people in aged care, you come across vulnerable populations, and our promise is to do no harm, that anyone can eat the food. And from a food safety point of view, we know that frozen is safer as well, because it stays at a lower temperature where bacteria can't grow, but also that it's got higher nutrient levels. So it just makes sense to us.
Most definitely. And you've just recently launched a TV series,
Yes.
28 Days That Changed My Life.
Yeah.
How did that all come about?
So the guys that make Bondi Vet, so WTFN, they've got a heap of really successful shows, and I guess I was looking around at different production teams and what sort of content they were putting out there, and these guys do they do the paramedic shows, lots of medical shows, and real life shows, and I really wanted to capture the lives of real people going on a journey to change their health. So we literally get 8 different people or couples, some are couples, that go on a 28-day journey. They clean up their diet and go on BeFit food. They start an exercise program, and they start just getting good, healthy habits back in. And every single episode has very unique people that are different to other episodes with different goals. So some people might be doing it because they want to have IVF and have a baby, other people because they're going through menopause, or they want to get their wedding ring back on. There's a girl who does it before her wedding because she's bought a wedding dress that she can't fit into, and the day was fast approaching, so that was a beautiful story, and she's now pregnant and about to have a baby, so
Fantastic.
It's a beautiful story. And another one of the girls actually called me today, and she's kept off she said 8 to 9 kilos that she lost. It's now been, would it be a year? Yeah, nearly a year. And she's just so happy. She's kept the program that I wrote for her in the gym, and she actually asked me, should I mix up the program? I was like, absolutely. Can I help you with that? So yeah, we keep in contact, and they're doing really well.
Does this story, or the stories of all these women, does that give you a really good feeling inside, knowing where you've come from at the start of trying to identify illness in yourself, and then you've created this company that can help with weight loss and better health overall, and then you can really make this go from a wide scale, national scale, where you've got thousands, millions of customers across the country, and then you bring it down to that individual person again, and you can work through their everyday life and really make it change for the better?
Absolutely. So this lady, Gina, she actually did the program because she's 51, and she wanted to be able to play with her new granddaughter who was turning 1, little Lottie, and it was Lottie's first birthday. And she said she'd put on so much weight that she just couldn't get up and down off the ground. She'd previously been a nanny to the rich and famous and all these beautiful people that she'd raised their children for. And then with her own grandchild, she just went, I don't have the energy and the stamina, and now she's able to play with Lottie. She said she had Lottie over last night, and the joy that she's got now is unbelievable.
Fantastic,
it's really
Kate.
nice. Yeah.
It's good to see your passion, and it comes through in every response that you've spoken about today. You can hear it and you can see it on your face, the passion that you have for the people that are behind your customers.
I'm going to have to tell you a little bit of a diversion there. So when I turned up to Gina's house, I thought I'd never met Gina before. And I walk up to the door. So we're live on camera, or not live, but we're on camera filming. And I knock on the door. So I don't know these people. I know nothing about them. And the door's bright yellow, like BeFit food bright yellow. And I'm like, what a coincidence. Yeah. Nothing to do with us, but just what a nice coincidence. What a happy house to have a bright yellow door. And I go in and we start filming and everything's on camera, and we take a break. And she goes, I don't know if you remember me. And I thought, oh no, is it a client that I've seen years ago? And I couldn't place her from anywhere. And she said, well, maybe you don't remember me because I used to change your nappies.
No.
So my parents had a childcare centre when I was, many, many years ago, and she worked in the childcare centre with my mum in the baby room, and she literally raised me, and I hadn't seen her since I was born, basically.
What a crazy turn of events it
I
is.
could
Jeez.
not believe it. Yeah.
That's unreal. It goes back to the small community again
Small
that we've
community.
got here.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Kate, as we finish up this afternoon, I've got 2 questions for you. The first is, what is the biggest lesson that you've learnt over your career as a business owner and a marketer as well? And then what one tip would you give someone who's completely fresh to marketing and business for them to improve by 1% today?
Okay, so I think the biggest tip is actually being so mindful of your cash flow. And I remember Janine saying to me all the time, cash is king. And I was like, yeah, we got cash, it's fine. And cash flow is really important. And she emphasized it all the time. And until you have a cash flow problem, you don't realize what that is, because you can have these huge sales and all this money coming in, but then all your debts might fall due at the same time. And then you realize the money that's coming in isn't enough to pay out. And if your stock levels are going up and you're investing in lots and lots of stock, you've just got this catch-22 situation. So everything can seem like it's growing and really, really smooth, but the cash flow can really make you come undone. So Janine also taught me something else which is highly valuable, is ask for money when you don't need it. And I've used that, and that has saved us so many times that I'll apply for some money or get a loan, and we actually did some crowdfunding. And if you do it when you don't need it, it's very easy to get. And then if you ever do need it, you've got it sitting there. So we all need a reserve. So put something in reserve. And in terms of marketing, growing a brand, growing a business, my number one tip there is to stay curious, to look at everything, to see what's out there. Don't think that something won't work, because the things that do work are often not the ones that you've backed with your money. And, it's always something outside of the square.
Kate, thank you so much. It's been fantastic to learn about your passion deeper, going into I knew a bit surface level of what it is that you've done over your career, and it's been fascinating to learn the ins and outs and behind the scenes at Shark Tank as an example there. The passion is contagious that you have coming through there. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.